compatriots, today, February 26th, and in this program we will talk about the events taking place around Armenia, as well as important international events. Today there is more information about Armenia than in the previous days, and perhaps we should start with the most important one. The Armenian foreign minister has announced that since 1980, Armenia has received answers from the Azerbaijani side regarding the peace treaty. You remember that the 2 points were not agreed upon, but I see something a little different in this statement. The Armenian Foreign Ministry states that the issue of lifting the blockade of transport and communications and the issue of their control still remains unclear, as well as the issue of developing arms control mechanisms. In other words, what comes out, in fact, I can't understand. It comes out that the 2 points that were not agreed upon were agreed upon, or that they are not those points. In other words, I remember the speech. It is about the fact that the issue of the European Union observation mission is not agreed upon between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Armenia proposed that demarcation and delimitation, only representatives of the European Union monitoring mission can leave the implemented border sections. And the second one was that, which is very Azerbaijani, and Armenia should abandon international mutual claims. That was also one of the discussion points. And just 2 days ago, Ruben Rubinian also spoke about it. However, we know that there was also the issue of unblocking transport communication. In the discussion and their control mechanisms, as well as the issue of arms control, these two issues were mainly the proposals of the Republic of Armenia, but I am curious about what the response was, in any case, from the Azerbaijani side to that message. As far as I understand its response, we do not have an answer to it, what the Azerbaijani side responded to. Regarding the 2 points related to the EU observation mission, which was not agreed upon with the Armenian proposal, and the second, as I already mentioned, the waiver of international mutual claims, I hope we will receive clarification on this in the coming days. It is possible that the Prime Minister of the Republic of Armenia will organize a new press conference or interview or something like that, and we will inform you about it. Regarding Ararat Mirzoyan's visit to Switzerland and the meetings there, it is very important. Some people have started to raise the issue of prisoners of war, the issue of political prisoners, the issue of political figures in the military political leadership of Artsakh, as I have already mentioned, the issue of military captives, which concerns the Armenian public much more, has also been discussed, along with the problems of the displaced people from Artsakh, and so on. I believe that discussions on all these issues are indeed extremely important. We also talked yesterday about a group of European parliamentarians who arrived in Armenia and had various meetings. During those meetings, Alen Simonian also made a statement. Over the past 4 years, Armenia has taken a clear direction and is implementing democratic reforms. I believe this is a very important statement, and the EU parliamentarians also clearly noted that Armenia's decision to move towards the European Union and to join the EU is very welcome. However, they pointed out that the Armenian society, the Armenian people, need to understand one thing when forming expectations from the European Union: that one day it will become a member of the European Union, and that clear understanding is that reforms must take place in all areas. Taking Georgia as an example, I can say that the Georgian authorities worked for many years to implement the necessary reforms to meet European standards. Georgia did a lot of work in this regard. And based on Georgia's experience, I imagine that Armenia will also need to work for quite a long time. It won't all happen at once. It could be accelerated, of course, but in any case, I think it will take several years. It will require Armenia to meet those standards. I also envision that there are still important steps to be taken in implementing reforms, after which Armenia will be able to apply and become a candidate country for the European Union. And as soon as it becomes a candidate, it will need to implement even more reforms. A roadmap will be provided to Armenia regarding what reforms and how to carry them out, at what speed, and so on these reforms need to be implemented in Armenia for Armenia to eventually become a member of the European Union. This means that if Armenia carries out these reforms in terms of legislation, the judicial system, and so on, it will be a long and important journey. If it succeeds, then Armenia will definitely have the right to become part of the European Union. It can also be added that Armenia is moving towards the EU. From the meeting of the Parliamentary Partnership Committee, the fact that very good and positive statements have been made about Armenia is extremely important for those evaluations. The statements made by European politicians and parliamentarians are extremely important for both the Armenian government and society. The EU ambassador to Armenia, Vasily Maragos, has also stated that the relationship between Armenia and the European Union has never been at such a high level as it is today. This is a very important acknowledgement, and he noted that work in this direction continues in terms of partnership. It is also important that the ambassador noted that a decision is now being made to export certain goods from Armenia to Europe, something we have been talking about for a long time. We place immense importance on this. It seems to be gradually becoming a reality, and my focus is initially on fish products, which Armenia will be able to export to Europe. He mentioned that all of this is being implemented to diversify Armenia's economy. This is very important for Armenia's economy as well. He says that this will open new pathways for Armenia, both for imports and exports. And naturally, it will strengthen the economy of Armenia. He also spoke about the historical and cultural heritage of Armenia, that in that regard, Armenia also has a fairly large and important potential in terms of tourism, etc., etc. In addition, he noted that on Sunday, the new TUMO building will be opened in the city of Kapanin-Siunik, which was financed and built with the support of the European Union. I think that all these statements are really extremely important, and we can make this statement. It's clear to see that practical steps are already being taken to deepen the relationship between Armenia and the European Union. And from all this, I think the most important thing is that gradually the European market should open up for Armenian products, just as the Armenian market should open up for European products. This is extremely important for the economy. Economic interaction between Africa and Armenia will be able to become more independent and reduce its dependence on Russia and hospitality. It's also important to note that a meeting took place in Tehran between the foreign ministers of Russia and Iran regarding the overall global issues concerning Iran. We will touch on international issues at the end, but it's important to mention here that the Iranian Foreign Ministry stated that Iran aims to establish relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Peace and cooperation are very important. It is crucial to note that the Iranian Foreign Minister has drawn the attention of the Russian Foreign Minister to this issue, and has reiterated Iran's position. And from this point, let's probably move on to international issues, and start with the fact that a meeting took place in Turkey between Turkish Foreign Minister Hani Adan and Azerbaijani Presidential Assistant Echbek Kaji and I. This is a very interesting meeting in the sense that I remember that Hajiev was also in Israel just 2 to 3 days ago and met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. They were discussing some programs, even Azerbaijani American rapprochement programs, road transport programs, regarding oil projects and so on. As for the military component, we currently do not have access to what they discussed. After that, the visit to Turkey and the meeting with Turkey's foreign minister took place. I'm just saying that we can connect all of this together. Besides, just 2 or 3 days ago, the Russian foreign minister visited Turkey and had meetings with both Turkey's foreign minister and the president of Turkey. Both with Turkey's foreign minister and the president of Turkey. Now, the Russian foreign minister is in Iran, and besides that, it's important to note that there are specific discussions online about the possibility of Israel striking Iran again. This issue has become active, and the international press is also discussing it. There are reports that the Iranian side has clear information regarding this and is trying to strengthen control around its nuclear facilities. Air defense, and Iran is specifically preparing for some kind of attack. It's also important to mention one thing, that there are 3 cargoes being discussed between the United States and Russia. Second, negotiations, that is the population, some of which we are informed, that such negotiations are taking place. Such negotiations were possible. Many have taken place and are taking place, and we are not aware of the others, but these are already the kinds of meetings that are being openly announced. Although up to this point we have no information about what meetings have taken place, what results have come from them, or what statements were made after those meetings. But it's simply interesting that meetings are happening between the United States and Russia. Lavrov is currently in Turkey and Iran, and now he is visiting Israel for the second time in a month, and then he will go back to Turkey. And those publications in the international press that Israel may strike Iran's nuclear facilities and that Iran is strengthening its defenses also indicate that stronger sanctions are now being imposed on Iran. All of this suggests to us that something is happening in our region. And in this regard, we need to be extremely careful and cautious, and it's very important that we understand what is really going on. Something is happening in our region. Let's move on to issues related to Ukraine. The Supreme Rada of Ukraine has confirmed Zelensky as the president amid the state of war. This means that there is a symbolic nature to this, and it was done in response to Trump, indicating that presidential elections in Ukraine will not take place until the state of war is over. The Rada, as a legitimate source, despite the president also being legitimate, has made this decision. But still, as an important source of legend, the drafts confirm that the president has the right to continue in office until the war is over. It is also important to note here that 3 documents were being circulated on Armenian Telegram channels, allegedly by the special service of the show Karina, who is doing everything to provoke a war between Azerbaijan and Russia. Allegedly, this will distract Russia from the war against Ukraine and allow Ukraine to surrender, achieve success. And I would like to note the following, that Ukrainian specialists have already revealed that it was a forgery. They found many mistakes in that document. And I say that it cannot correspond to reality. It is simply a fabricated document for specific purposes. In my opinion, that document was indeed fabricated. Of course, I cannot rule out anything. But in my opinion, that document was definitely fabricated in order to... There are issues created between Armenia, Ukraine, and Azerbaijan in their relations. What is it? Naturally, it is also very important for Russia, and we need to verify any such information that is being spread. Let's try to clarify it very thoroughly and carefully, so that if this issue interests us, and I know it interests many, we can better understand whether this or that statement or document corresponds to reality or not. I want to reiterate that, in my view, that document was a fabrication, which is also being discussed by Ukrainians, having clearly pointed out numerous inaccuracies in the document. The next important point regarding Charlotte is that it is possible that Zelensky will visit the White House on February 28th, and a document will be signed there with the United States of America. This is reported by the White House, but what kind of document it will be, it is difficult to say for sure. It is very likely that this document will be signed. Donald Trump and Zelensky will discuss rare metals, which Ukraine has already celebrated at the forum. Trump is not talking about $500 billion in rare metals, but about twice as much. In fact, he is already talking. Let's see what will be signed. And also notes that in the case of the showman, no security guarantees were given to Ukraine by the United States within the framework of that document. But Zelensky also said that if security guarantees are not provided to Ukraine, then such a document will not be signed by the White House either. I report that the United States is hopeful, and I imagine that very soon there will be a meeting between Vladimir Zelensky and Vladimir Putin, and more likely that meeting will take place between Zelensky and Trump. In other words, I don't even rule out that possibility. 3 presidents who will gather, and they should try to stop that war. That is, through pressure from the United States of America. That war should stop, and such a document should be signed. I am making such a bold assumption. True, all this is not on the internet, but statements on the logic of forgiveness. This indeed tells me that this war will end very soon. A meeting will take place between Putin and Zelensky. That is, it doesn't specify that it will be 3 presidents gathering somewhere to sign that document, but it seems that such a thing is possible. It could happen, if not in the United States. Then perhaps in that same trio, they might start signing some document between Trump and Putin, and it again raises the point that the European Union might be left out once more. By the way, Lavrov also stated that since the European Union has chosen the path of tension and is trying to help Ukraine more now, the EU should stay out of the negotiation process, even though just one day ago, President Vladimir Putin of the Russian Federation announced other things. Now, there is much more discussion online about Russia's rare metals, which Putin is offering to the United States. In fact, not only Putin, but also various other officials have made 90 posts stating that Russia has a lot of rare metals, ranks fourth in the world, and, in fact, clearly hinting that it is ready to share these rare metals with the United States of America, and there are clear hints from the United States of America from the White House that in the near future the United States of America may cancel sanctions against Russia. Now judge for yourselves based on all this. And one very important piece of information is that Macron has returned from the United States. When he made this statement, he said that if there is peace, it should be without capitulation, and if there is a ceasefire, there must be guarantees for a clear peace, and that peace should become a long-term guarantor of sovereignty for Ukraine. He reiterated that in that statement, we will all take peace upon ourselves for our collective security. In other words, these posts by Macron are very clear that Ukraine must remain sovereign, and if peace is established, there must be very serious guarantees for security, and it should not be declared that Ukraine is capitulating. Ukraine should not capitulate what is actually happening. In fact, in my view, what is happening is that there is an urgent need for a ceasefire in the areas where Russia is present. The war will be halted in those territories, and Vladimir Zelensky will be removed from the presidency of Ukraine. Overall, he is not opposed to Trump saying that European forces should be deployed in Ukraine, and Ukraine should remain a sovereign country. Here with that, it seems that Vladimir Putin is at least at this moment ready to accept that Ukraine remains a sovereign country, but this will allow him to declare in Russia that they have achieved their goal, meaning they have managed to capture part of Ukraine. And indeed, the current president of Ukraine is no longer Vladimir Zelensky, and that's why there is undoubtedly so much pressure on him to step down from the presidency of Ukraine. I can also, as a matter of fact, bring a book as evidence of this statement, which expresses the belief that very soon, in the near future, the war between Russia and Ukraine will be halted, meaning something is indeed being prepared for that. It's also important to mention one more thing. Even if the war doesn't end, there were reports yesterday that by 2026, a document will be signed by Biden, stating that the United States will supply weapons and ammunition to Ukraine. True, that decision might not be sent by Trump very quickly, but such a document exists. And besides that, to supply Ukraine with enough weapons to sustain the war until spring. Now the European side will increase the supply of weapons, and in addition, according to Ukrainian sources, Ukraine is already able to provide itself with most of the weapons of the Ukrainian army, independently producing weapons, ammunition, various armaments, especially unmanned aerial vehicles, artillery and artillery means, etc., etc. And the situation has actually changed, and Ukraine is now producing more weapons on its own than it receives from abroad. To be honest, if we are sincere, American weapons are still the most serious and important ones used, which hold great significance for Ukraine. They provide air defense, which Ukraine could be deprived of. And secondly, now there is a clear discussion in Ukraine, and not only in Ukraine, but also in European countries, that Europe will increase its weapons production, and it will only take a few months, after which Europe will be able to supply Ukraine with weapons in quite large volumes. By autumn, Europe should be able to implement all of this. Let's see how events will unfold. But I want to reiterate that according to the statements from the American side, this war will come to an end very soon, which I consider important. We've recently heard about Macron's announcement that he made upon returning from Washington. This time it's about the phone conversation. He had a meeting, all with the Prime Minister of Great Britain and the President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky. He clearly states that they are ready to work for a strong and long-term peace. Macron has also made such a statement, meaning that Macron's two statements further clarify that they are now preparing some kind of peace program, a peace plan, and possibly a document will be signed in this regard, and some decision will be made. First, a ceasefire will be established, and then the end of the war will be announced. That's all for this statement, dear compatriots. I want to remind you again to like this video. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. Always get the latest updates from our YouTube channel. Goodbye. See you next time.